So in where am I at? In section 6, Nietzsche talks about every drive being tyrannical and that the will to truth is itself a drive. So what does this mean? Um, I had said earlier, and again, if it weren't for the first Bush administration, that 1,000 points of light, and not that 999 is wrong and 1,001 is wrong, but just like a total set of powers out into the world. We are a total set of powers. Hunger and desire in every form. A desire to know, desire to learn, desire to touch, desire to have, desire for sexual desire, but also economic desires and everything. I'm just like it's powers into this world. A truth thinking thing and a moral thinking thing and a sensual thing in the sense that I am senses into the world. So there's just so many ways that I am a power into the world. And each power wants satisfaction, right? Like when I look at something, I want to be able to see it. And if it's not there, I squint and I go with my glasses and I get a look closer or whatever, right? The desire to see what it is I'm looking at is like tyrannical, right? And the same, my hunger, when I'm hungry, I'm like, what is there in the world? My hunger. Because it's the only thing I'm on hunger. It's like, I demand satisfaction. And all of the other things that I am too, even my fantasy things and my fantastical ideas and like whatever else stuff. I'm also the will to truth. So if we think of all of those different kinds of things as like a will to power, that like I allow the whole of myself to engage a world, the will to truth does not allow that. The will to truth is also a tyrannical drive, but it is a tyrannical drive of a specific sort. It is a tyrannical drive that says, I am the only drive. Unless you can fit into my box, my little perception of reality, unless you can be marked as true, you're nothing. So all of that other stuff that I am into the world is either understood as that or as not me. So the drive to truth occludes in advance even the possibility of me being something else. It occludes in advance even me asking after something that doesn't fit in that box. If you ask about yourself in a way that doesn't fit in that box, then, you get crazy looks. Whatever one might think, I wonder if I'm a soul. I wonder if my soul has lived before. Is there past lives? I wonder if I'm in touch with other people. I wonder if my sense that I have sometimes that there's something going wrong is really a sense, because it kind of seems like that sometimes. That's silliness. Doesn't fit in the box. Get to stepping, crazy person. That's what the will to truth, it's like it just wants to like lay waste to anything that is not it. So the will to truth is dangerous in that way, because it disallows in advance things that don't fit its understanding to even show up. So like we're walking around, yeah, that's right, man, great, I see reality, or maybe just like a little bit of it. So this is one of the critiques. This is from section 6, section 12. This is a mind-blowing moment for me. And because it's just so damn obvious. And one of the things that I like about philosophy is when it hands my life to myself in a way that is new. Like it has removed or shown me presuppositions that I had that I didn't know, right? And this is one of the things that Nietzsche's going to do in this next bit, section 12. It starts off with the assumption about material atomism. And material atomism is the idea that the world is made up of tiny little bits, like atoms. So this is like what physics might think, but one of the things that Nietzsche is saying, or maybe one of the things that he's critiquing, is the idea to understand that there are tiny little unities that like every assessment of the world comes from a sort of unified view or from a unified thing. And he thinks that this is problematic. So when he starts off this thing that says no one who's even smart or even pretending to be smart thinks that the world is made up of tiny little bits. But that's sort of like the science of the time, or the soon-to-be science of the time, or whatever. One of the things that maybe we could think about is this. It's not only is it a sort of reductive critique and a critique that throws to the wind lived experience, but Nietzsche also might be thinking of other advances in the sciences like magnetic fields, so that anything that's understood is never understood as a thing in itself, right? But always bound up and held together. And so even if it's like this little thing, this is an atom, but how's the atom an atom? Because of magnetic fields. And how's that atom itself, where it is and what it is? Because of magnetic fields. So is there ever any little tiny thing that's unaffected by everything else? Nope. So this might be the stance that he's critiquing when he starts in on that material atomism thing in section 12. But does the earth move? Does the earth move? Well, I guess I can't read for hands. But I bet you'd even raise an eyebrow. Why the hell is he asking this? Like, does the earth move? Duh. But I'm asking you, for real, does the earth move? And if you still say yes, stomp your foot on the ground. What's that? What is under there? It's the earth. Is it moving? If it were, that's like death and destruction. We call that an earthquake. Buildings crumble and all of that, right? Does the earth move? No. Why would you ever think so? Oh, that's right, that pole Copernicus, right? That pole Copernicus. This is Nietzsche's language, right? So let's take a look at the selection. This is section 12. He says, for this we can thank that Pole Boscovich, who's actually, I guess, Czechoslovakian, but that Pole Boscovich, who, together with that Pole Copernicus, was the greatest and most successful opponent to visual evidence. While Copernicus convinced us to believe, contrary to our senses, that the earth does not stand still, Boscovich taught us to renounce belief in the last bit of earth that did stand still, the belief in matter, in the material, in the residual piece of earth and a clump of an atom. It was the greatest triumph over the senses that this world has ever known. So that Pole Copernicus and that Pole Boscovich, who was actually Czech, what's he saying? So Copernicus is the guy that said, in around 1500, if we stand in the middle of the sun, like in a thought experiment, if we take up a position in the middle of the sun, all of those strange astronomical things that we couldn't really figure out, like the retrograde movement of planets, they're like this, oink, yoink, 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 yoink. That's very hard to understand if you think that they're moving around the earth, right? Which was what a lot of people thought, right? Because earth is the center, created by God, God's in heaven, earth is his footstool, that's how it says in the Bible, and so, of course it's the center. Duh. But so then how do you explain these weird things that happen astronomically and so forth? And Copernicus says, if you stand in the middle of the sun and observe these things, all of that stuff gets explained away. So what we might assume here is that the world that we live in doesn't revolve around the earth, but revolves around the sun. So Copernicus is the guy that says heliocentrism and shows it, demonstrates it. I mean, his book that he published on his deathbed, or after he died actually, is like this thick, and the first 10 pages are the introduction, and it's a whole bunch of measurements. And that's some stuff, of course, at the end, explaining them, but it's just like, it's measurements. And he says, like, if we stand in the middle of the sun, we can see what really happens. Okay? Standing in the middle of the sun, we see what really happens. And this is Nietzsche's example here, but let's think of Galileo. Galileo puts together a couple of lenses, wraps them up in a leather thing, and looks up and sees a moon around Saturn. Or is it Jupiter? A moon around Jupiter, and gasps and says, I see what reality is. Right? Alas, I finally see what's real. Anton von Leeuwenhoek, the guy who invented the microscope, right? Looks down in the microscope tube and says, I can see what things really are. So how do we see how things really are? You want to get in touch with reality, all right? One eyeball in a microscope, one eyeball in a telescope, and stand in the middle of the sun. All of them give up the world that they live in. The truths of the earth, for some people, cannot be found on the earth. You got to stand in the middle of the sun. I mean, that's not even a human possibility, right? So the truth of the solar system is a truth that can't even be a truth for humans. I wonder who it could be a truth for. You know, that idea of the sun and then Mercury and then and Mars and Earth and Venus and all of them go all the way down like that. I got to go back to my 8th grade class to get that. But you know that they're all sort of that view. You know, that's never a human view. That's never a human view. If you've gone out and looked at the night sky, you can see planets, but it's hard to tell, if you don't have some experience, if it's a planet or a star, because it's just like a gleaming thing in the sky. It ain't moving. You don't see it doing this. You don't see any of that. If you want to try to watch it, you got to be there for a long time and get a whole lot of better eye. Right? So even if a human were out looking at the solar system like this, all we see is dots. If we stand in a point where we can see all of the planets, all we would see is dots, not moving things. I wonder who would see them all lined up and spinning just the way he maybe had created it. In other words, the point of view of physics is sort of a God's eye view of the world. What happens if no human stands here and looks like a human stands and looks? But no human, every human, maybe none, looks at our solar system, always sees it like this, a happy little thing. This is not the truth of a human experience ever. And yet, I ask you if the earth moves, and I'm like, yeah, dummy, yeah. And never in your life will you experience anything like the earth moving. So the question is, like, why is it that for these scientists like Copernicus and Boscovich, that the truth of the world has to be something that is not experienced by humans? That the truth of the world is a view that a human could never have, except for maybe unaided. And why is that aided view the truth, the real view? Seeing more doesn't mean real. I mean, it's not like why is this not real? And from what point of view do we expect our truth? From a point of view that a human could never have? From a God's eye point of view? If we can just make up whatever view that we want and call that the reality, then maybe why don't we stand in the middle of an atom? If we can't stand in the middle of the sun, and that's where truth is found, well, let's see what the world looks like if we stand in the middle of the atom. Is the Earth moving? What Earth? I'm this tiny little thing. I'm this tiny little thing. Why not stand, well, like anywhere? If we can stand anywhere, because that'll be the point of view on truth. Why in the middle of the sun? Why in the middle of space where everything's lined up? Why do I have to be this size? Why can't I be tiny, maybe huge? If we're making up whatever points of view, and then we call those points of view the point of view on reality, and that the reality that we live as false, wow. Yeah, so we sort of let go of our lives and live things that have live things as true that have nothing to do with our lives. That are never even experienceable by us. Nietzsche goes further and down this path, but we must go further still and declare a war, a ruthless fight to the finish on the atomistic need that the more famous metaphysical need still leads to a dangerous afterlife in regions where nobody would think to look. What he's saying here is that atomistic need is like my soul. This is it. My reality is this one soul thing, and there's a one God thing. That's the thing that made the soul. So together, that's like this single things that are collected together, and they're the truth things, right? This is an idea that even after the death of God shows itself in the sciences. If we stand someplace that only maybe God could stand, in the middle of space looking at our solar system, this is what it looks like. That's the truth of it. Right? So when he says God is dead as a warning, he means look out. God is going to show up. All of those assumptions are going to be there again. First of all, we must put an end to that other and most disastrous atomism, the one that Christianity has taught best and longest, the atom is of the soul. So how would we do that? He says a little further down. But the paths lie open for new versions and sophistications of the soul hypothesis and concepts like mortal soul and soul as subject multiplicity and soul as a social constructed out of drives and effects, as socially constructed out of drives and effects, right? So a mortal soul, again, what is this about? That anti-teleology that Nietzsche's always trying to get us to rethink, right? If I'm an immortal soul, there's all of me. I'm unchanging. I'm just like all this thing. If I just do the 10 Commandments, right, I get into heaven, right? And so the meaning of my life is later on. But what if I die? What if I just die? What if I just die? Then there's nothing at the end of, there's no dessert at the end of my trek. So if this soul is nothing but a thing coming to an end, maybe I'd live right now differently, right? Or maybe I am like a plurality of things and it's not even a single thing. And to try to be me is to try to construct a fabrication. Maybe I should be letting this stuff go. So this idea that there's like a single thing and a single point of view and a final stance of truth, and these are all just sort of remnants of religious thought that did not die with God, and they must be in another translation. He says instead of a brutal close war, it's translated as a brutal war with the knife. In other words, we got to carve it out of ourselves. So that's the end of that one. So one of my favorite expressions from Nietzsche, there's a whole bunch, but this is one of my favorites, at least for the moment. Superfluous teleological principles. Beware superfluous teleological principles. So what is that? Superfluous being something like extraneous, unnecessary, beyond the essential, right? So there's the essences of the things that are essential to life, and then the stuff that's packed onto it that aren't. So that's superfluous. Teleological, well, we've been talking about that. So teleological has to do with goal or purpose or end, right? So the purposes of life, the goals of life, and the end of life, in the sense of why I'm living it, there's a lot of superfluous teleological principles added to it, right? What am I living for and why? Is heaven a superfluous teleological principle? Is that an unessential goal to my life? Money, house, fast car, a hot spouse, whatever, right? Are these superfluous teleological principles? Well, that's up in the air, and Nietzsche might say so. I don't know. Guess what he says is a superfluous teleological principle. Let's check it out. This is the paragraph, section 13. What page is it on? On page 15. So physiologists, that is to say those people that study animals and the bodies of animals, right, should think twice about positing the drive for self-preservation as the cardinal drive of an organic body. Above all, a living thing wants to discharge its strength. Life itself is will to power. Self-preservation is only one of the indirect and most frequent consequences of this. In short, here as elsewhere, watch out for superfluous teleological principles. Self-preservation. Self-preservation is a goal, is not an essential goal. He says in a different book, again, I think it's the Die Frohliche Wissenschaft, the gay science. All of English Darwinism has the stink of a small people confined to a small island. Why? So England, Darwin, survival of the self-preservation. Nietzsche says that's what an Englishman would come up with. They're all wimps and afraid. I don't want to get killed today. Oh, I'm afraid. I'm going to stay in my hole over here. I just want to make sure I live through the day. Right? So Nietzsche's like to say, the heck with them. They're all just wimps. Of course, this is what they would think the essence of life is. Whiny babies, right? Life doesn't want to just hide and be afraid. Life wants to expand. Life wants to discharge its powers. And, one of the things is that we've taken this idea of self-preservation as if it is the absolute principle to understand all living things, including ourselves. Yahoos run around with guns all the time because they think they're going to get into a shootout at the OK Corral any minute. Because it's happened once or twice every once in a while, right? So I have to be on guard to protect my life at every time. I need to have an assault rifle because I'm afraid to go out to the grocery store without it. Life isn't. Chipmunks and squirrels have more courage than that. You walk around, you see that there is not. The things of nature are not at every moment in constant dread. They hang out and do things, right? They sometimes there is moments that are pressing and emergent. And they have to react or they might die. And they are very important. I'm not trying to say that they're not. But they do not define the whole of life. And so to think that this one moment, an emergency moment, is the principle for all of my living is to live according to a superfluous teleological principle. That's literally to take that will to power and hide it away out of fear. And again, these are principles like black and white and male and female and survival. These are principles that we put on ourselves and put in ourselves a little box Is it safe to come out? Okay, so just to sort of sum things up here, what he's trying to do is put us in a position where those dichotomies of our tradition no longer hold sway here, especially as regards morality, right? So, free will, strong will, weak will, free or not free. These free or not is the will to truth, and the will to truth assumes that there's a free will to choose the right thing, and every free will is the same free will to choose the right thing, and no one's other than that and to choose the right thing. So if you don't choose the right thing, we can put you in jail, right? We've assumed this. That's why there's moral culpability and legal culpability, right? Animals don't have the same culpability. Lions don't kill. I mean, lions only kill. They don't murder, right? It's murder is a moral category, and it's a thing that we could choose not to do. And if we choose otherwise, well, then we're a problem. But and that puts us in a box that we're like this choosing things, the moral things, something like that, and really only with like a set of things that we can and can't do, like maybe 10 things that you're supposed to do or not, right? This sort of thing. And Nietzsche wants to do away with that. And there's a great passage I want to read now. It's on page 23. It's also paragraph 23. And it's towards the bottom of the page. Excuse me. On the other hand, if you are ever cast loose here with your ship, well now, come on, clench your teeth, open your eyes, and grab hold of the helm. We are sailing straight over and away from morality. We are crushing and perhaps destroying the remnants of our own morality and daring to travel there. But what do we matter? So, a couple things. Sailing right over. I mean, this is like the things that we call good are not the same things for someone who is sailing right over them. Good, when you're sailing, what's the water like? Is it different over here than it is over here, or port, starboard, or whatever? No, it's like indistinct. From the point of view of this new philosopher, from the point of view of this new man, good and bad, right and wrong are indistinct. They're just same things. So, that doesn't mean that this new man has to be violent or mean, but it doesn't mean they're not going to be, and there's no measure to saying one way or the other. So there's that. Also, here, we are crushing morality, but what do we matter? That's that moment of like, if you find this to be shameful, if you find this to be problematic, if you're listening to your professor now and you think that this is a bad thing because he's saying it's a bad thing and it's a dangerous thing, what do we matter? In other words, who am I? If you're upset, you're upset, right? This is, I mentioned this earlier, if you find yourself burning against Nietzsche, it's because you burn. And it's not Nietzsche. So this is like, you're going to just throw away morality? What a fool. Why am I so concerned about that? Because I need that order. I need those right and wrong. I need all that. Boy, oh boy. At least this is what his critique is, right? So those who would not want to get rid of morality are the ones who only understand themselves according to it. And those who are made upset by somebody saying, let's sail right over it. If you're upset by that, well, you're only upset with yourself. Because you've just realized that you're not even a strong-willed person. You need the definition. You need to be told what's right and wrong. And without that, you are lost. Again, I'm not calling anyone names here. This is like Nietzsche's assessment. The next bit is in